Well, hello there. John Meyer here. It's Friday, and this is my first attempt at live streaming. I usually release a video every week, but I thought that I would do something a little bit different. I'm just going to look over at my stream and make sure everything is good. This is a little nerve-wracking knowing or not knowing if I'm talking to myself alone in my studio, but I do that all the time anyway, so not that much different. So yeah, before we get going, the idea behind this video was me talking about how I went about scoring the Westworld, the Spitfire Audio's Westworld competition. And I only used my sounds. And so if you're unfamiliar with what I've done, I've been sampling my instruments around the studio and I've been releasing those. They're on my website, johnmeyermusic.com/samples, JONMEYER music.com/samples. And so you can go and download those and mess around with them. They're also, most of them at this point, are up on a site called pianobook.co.uk. Many of you that are going to watch this, especially at the beginning, or who may be joining me for the live stream, are very familiar with Piano Book. It's a great site, loads of samples. And yeah, so go check that out. Go check those out and download them and use them and make stuff with them. And so what's the purpose of this week's live stream? Well, let me tell you about how I came to this. I've been trying to release a video every Friday, and I've done really good. I think this is the 10th week in a row that I've done so. However, this week, with a lot of other work I had going on, I decided on Tuesday that I was going to enter this competition. And up until that point, I decided I wasn't going to do it. You know, there's like thousands and thousands of entries, and I would never win, and they're all so good. And I had all these reasons why I wasn't going to do it. And then I think I was lying in bed, and I thought, well, those are all really stupid reasons. I need to give this competition a try. And in an effort to show my own voice, or to kind of do my own thing, or whatever that means, you know, to try to make my own sound, I thought, well, I've got a handful of sounds that I've made over the past year that need, or I've kind of covered rhythm, and I've covered some pad-like sounds, and I've covered some bell sounds and pianos. So even though this was a chase scene, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about the scene, it's from Westworld. If you're a musician and you're on YouTube, you've probably seen this all over the place for the past couple months. But it's a chase scene, a Westworld, and the winner, basically we're all submitting our music, and it's going to be judged by the guys at Spitfire, the gals at Spitfire, and then it'll go on to another judging crew of people that worked with Westworld, including J.J. Abrams. And so, you know, that's what all this is for. So I thought my best bet would be to try to do something that, you know, take a different approach. So what I'm going to show you today, you can judge my composition whether or not it's good or not. I did it fairly quickly, and I'm proud of the way it turned out. However, what I really want to focus on today is how I take these sounds and I manipulate them to work in this chase scene aggressive environment, right? I'm going to check my text real quick to make sure I'm good. I got some friends say, definitely see and hear you. Looking good. All right. I'm going to power through. All right, let me put my headphones on, and this may change when I start playing music, so you let me know if my levels are off. But I have my Pro Tools session here, and this is a bit confusing. It could be a bit confusing, so I want to show you what I've done from the start. The bottom part of this, from kick in down to the harmonic track, are my MIDI tracks that's how I wrote the piece. And then when I get to a certain point, I committed the audio from those MIDI tracks, and then that's what you see up here. So I've got this hybrid session. This is not how I normally work, but I'm going to be jumping back and forth because I do some manipulation to the track after the fact. So what you hear in MIDI is not exactly what you're going to hear in the audio. But I'm just going to go track by track. First of all, in this audio, you can see my basic routing. I've got the video up on the top, and then and the dialogue on top, and then I have all of my music tracks running into a music bus, and you can see that I did some automation to the music bus. We had to submit everything together, a finished product, so I got the music the way I wanted it to sound, always listening to the dialogue while I was writing it, but then at the end I went and dropped the levels to make sure that things could be heard. So I figured that's the way it would happen in real life, so we're going to go with it, and I think it worked okay. So down here, let me just start out with this kick drum. Now, the kick drum that I used is from my soft drums, and the idea behind these sounds is that, I'm going to go ahead and play them without, oops, hit the wrong button. Oh, the wheel of death. Probably going to get a lot of that. Might get some crashing. Any questions over here? I'm looking on my computer. If you do have a question, I'll try to glance over to my other computer as much as possible to make sure that I catch it. But until the spinning wheel of death stops, I've been having issues lately. Issues my whole life, to be honest, with Pro Tools and stuff. And so we'll see. Oh, it looks like we're done. I'm hopping back over to Pro Tools. All right, and there's everything. Okay, we're back. Now let's look at this kick instrument. So that's the way it sounds with the decapitator on it, but let's go back to, this is just my soft drum sample. I sampled these, a buddy of mine brought his Ludwig kit over in my drum room across the hallway, and the idea behind these samples was to make something quiet and soft, you know, that could sit under quiet music, right? A lot of big drum samples out there, they're hard to work into quieter sound. So that was the idea behind this. However, anything with a little distortion on it, in this case, so here's my kick drum. With distortion on it, we have an aggressive sound. And one of the reasons I thought this might be interesting to show you how this works is that sometimes you're taking samples and you might be cutting a little low mid out, or you might be boosting a little bit of the top end, or doing some minor things, and you wonder, did I really need to do that? Well, with these sounds, they are manipulated completely. And so I even hit the punish button, and I rarely hit the punish button. I mean, to be honest, that's not something I do a ton. So let me solo this up. Let me hop on over to my track to make sure I'm in the right spot. My windows are a little different than I'm normally working, so the visual real estate's off, but here we go with the kick drum. Take punish off. And notice I'm using decapitator, by the way. I'm going to use it on almost every track for this for this particular scene. Notice I have this thump engaged. And what that does is it allows me to move the low cut up and down to where I find that frequency, the low frequency of the kick drum, and make it stand out a little bit more. So let me turn it on and off. It's subtle, but it helps. It helps just really pinpoint that frequency when you want it to stick out in the mix. There's not a lot going on in the low frequency, so I really wanted to have that energy there. Got the tone knob that I darkened it up, and my high cut. Not doing a lot there, and so not a ton of drive, but it's being punished. So there you go. Now, one thing, I was working in a template, and don't get me talking about templates. I was building this massive orchestral template, and I'm still working on it in Pro Tools, and it's not the way I normally work. Normally, I just create tracks as I go, but I've got some sounds that I want to use a lot, and so I've been working on this template. And I wrote this in the template, and what I've done is I just got rid of everything that I wasn't using in the template, and that's what you see now. And so I started adding some of these plugins that I use a lot to these individual tracks, and that's why you're going to see. So I got to be careful that I don't engage. I should just get rid of some of these, but that'll take too much time. I don't want to engage things that I didn't actually use. So it looks like I had Echo Boy on this. I believe I found that to be too muddy, and it kind of lost its focus of the kick drum, so I muted that. Okay, so that's basically the kick sound and the kick rhythm that plays throughout. You can see that it comes and goes in different parts of the song. Again, I don't want to get too much into my choices on why I dropped certain things out or built certain things in certain spots. That to me is the trick for this this whole project, is that yes, we have the reference track of what was really in the video to draw from, but there's no spotting session. We don't know exactly what people want to hear when, and that's kind of the fun part of working with directors in the limited experience I have of working on scenes like this. So I'm gonna stick to the sounds, right? Okay. Now we've got our kick, and then I have my hi-hat sound. So I needed something to keep that pace. And what I did here is I played, let me take the plugins off. I played the hat on the F sharp, the closed hat, and the foot pedal. I'm hearing a bit of a delay there, so forgive me if my playing is very off. I quantize everything anyways, not a big deal there. So anyways, I thought that was an interesting rhythm and interesting sound, and I knew I was going to manipulate it further, so I liked that they sounded different instead of just that over and over again. Decapitator, again, similar. I may have copied it over from the kick drum. It looks like that's what I did as I was working quickly. And then I added Duck, and Duck is something I've mentioned in previous videos. It's a cheap plugin that I found that allows to add rhythm to your sound. It's a gate, sidechain gate type of plugin that's really cool and visual, and I like it. So what I wanted here I simply wanted to tighten up the sound some. And in a way, I'm taking away from that open hat sloshiness when I do that. But as I got going on the mix, I thought that would be a good way to just help make it more of a defined sound. It's set to 16th notes. And then I have Echo Boy. And it's simply running 16th notes as well. It's not doing much, but I felt like it added a little something to it. Sometimes I can tell you exactly why I did something. Oh, it was for this purpose. Sometimes I try it and then, oh, that's kind of cool. It doesn't make it worse. It makes it a little better to me. So let's move quickly and move on. All right. Now, let's get to the track that probably started it all. I wanted to have some kind of chordal movement, and so we get to basic. Let's listen to basic. I'm going to go ahead and mute or bypass Duck and Decapitator, and here is basic. This is a sample that I made, or an instrument that I made, because I'm always wanting simple bass sounds, and so I sampled my different plugins over here. I've made videos about that. You can go watch them. And I wanted to also have the ability to open up the filter. That's something that I really want to do often. Is I have a chord and then I assign the filter to the mod wheel so that I can basically perform the sound as I go to give it some movement and change throughout the track, right? And so this is an arpeggiated track. You can listen to what I did. And that's when I came up with that little motif, da, 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 which plays throughout the piece. And now it doesn't sound like that in the final version because I added Duck to it to give it movement. And notice that my mod wheel is affecting the low pass filter, and you can see the movements here. Especially when you get to this down section. I see it as a way to have one sound that's consistent, yet it changes, and it's always there, but the low pass filter makes the whole feel of the sound change dramatically. And so it allows you to play something throughout the piece without it getting too terribly boring. And then, of course, it needed its head chopped off with Decapitator. And you can definitely hear the thump engaged on that low frequency. And it sticks out certain notes more than others, but the only way for that thump to work is by bringing up the low cut. So you're bringing up the cut to the point where you want it to thump, where you want it to resonate, that frequency, to make that frequency stand out. So a little drive. I lean towards this in style. When you're first using Decapitator, it's kind of hard to tell the difference between these, but when you really start to push sounds into it, they all take on a different tone of their own. So that is the basic track. All right. And now we move on. Oh, I hear some pads there, right? Now I made a basic pad, and I'm calling this, it was more of a swell type sound. Let's listen to this. First of all, let's listen to it without the plugins. We'll get rid of duck so I don't turn it on accidentally. I was using this for moments of impact. And just riding the low pass filter up. Now when you add Decapitator to that, that's a lot of distortion, right? And then when you add Echo Boy to that, Echo Boy, a common setting for me is this eighth note on one side, dotted eighth on the other, the dual echo. And that's a lot of distortion. It sounded okay in the mix. I just went for it on this. I don't always do that, but again, these sounds are not aggressive by nature, so I had to make them aggressive. I notice the low cut is up on, almost always I'm bringing up the low cut, and a lot of times I'm bringing up the high cut because I want that delay to kind of fit in the middle. I don't want the low frequencies just reverberating with the delay over and over again, muddying up my mix. So if I don't need it, I cut it. Long feedback, because long feedbacks are fun. All right, so those swells happen throughout. Now we get to the Kauai piano. Now, this is my felt piano that whoa. There it is with everything on it. That's the piano behind me, right? Very pretty and soft and quiet, all that. Pultec EQ, which is something I almost always am dumping a bunch of low frequency from that particular piano. And I am boosting 10 at 5 kilohertz to brighten it up. Otherwise, it's a super, super dull boomy. Very useful for in certain situations, but not this one. Then, because every felt piano needs to be punished, and then Echo Boy. By the way, if you want to listen to, I'll play the track down, but you can also go find my video. It's the last video that I submitted to the YouTube, or that I put up on YouTube on Wednesday, and so you can go and listen to that and see what I did. All right, so the purpose for this was I went to that sound a lot, that melody a lot, so I wanted some ways to build it towards the end of the track to try to heighten the energy level, and so I simply doubled that melody. Now, I had to figure out a way to work in the handbells. And when I listened back the other day, I probably worked them in a little too loud. Let me see. Actually, this... what this is... And I don't even know if you could really hear it. This was an experiment that didn't quite work out all that well, or at least it's not all that noticeable. I knew that I needed some kind of riser or kind of some swells into these changing sections, right? And so what I did here is I played all the notes real aggressively, and then I laid off slowly so that I could then print it down and reverse it. And so let me hop back up to the audio of this, which should be right here. Let me close this down. Oh, it's right here. Handbell reverse. You can hear what that sounds like when I flipped it around. With more effects, I'll explain in a second. So you can see it pick up intensity. Now, Little Altar Boy is something I use a lot for these type of sounds where I want it to, it just needs to, the harmonic information needs to really punch through. And so I'm raising it an octave. Oh, it looks like I turned it off. I don't know why I did that. That sounds really cool. I should have left that in. And then I had duck on here. I was cycling through rhythmic presets, and notice I turned the amount way down. Again, not doing much in the long run there. Echo Boy always doing a lot. The Space Echo setting, and this is probably a default patch that I found. I love it. It sounds fantastic. Overuse it. And then I put VMR on. VMR is a go-to for me when I'm working fast because I know it so well, and I've kind of committed myself to paying the stupid $20-something a month for the rest of my life. But it's on all of my library tracks, and when I need to mix quickly and get the sound quickly. It looks like all I did here was raise the filter up on the bottom to cut out any unnecessary low frequency information. Okay, let's move back down to the MIDI. I don't seem to have the MIDI here, but I have another handbell sound. It's right here. And my handbells don't sound that way, so obviously I use duck or something to give it some rhythm to make those impactful moments. And they happen quite a bit. And like I said, I think it's a little too loud in the final mix, but it was nice. And quite a bit of hall reverb. My returns, for this one, I just have a plate room and a hall, and my reverb is probably, Concert Hall Vienna. Nothing special there. Fab Filter is special, but. All right. Any questions for me? Let me check this out. MT Champion, you wrote a lot of stuff. Let me see here. Let me acknowledge that at the end for the people that are still sticking around. Okay, now we move on to the flute and violin samples. This is what got me into sampling in the first place. This was just a fun little experiment, and I was shocked at how cool they turned out. And I've heard so many of you use these sounds, and it's been super cool. So here they are. So I'm using the sustain effects and the waves effects versions of this, which are basically run through Echo Boy and some other reverbs. It's a lot of times when I'm writing with this, I will use the dry sounds and add my own effects to fit the track that I'm working on. However, I was working quick and I knew I liked that sound, so I went with it. And I'm playing both of them together. And when I do that, I typically am. What did Christian Henson on his video called it? Feathering, just like playing the samples because they have their own decay time and they behave in different ways. So it's just kind of creating an atmospheric pad sound. Now, you'll also see that I believe there was some pitch information Perhaps not. Perhaps that was on something different. Oh, I think I missed this. Oh, look on the... This was a scene during the video where he's changing genres. And if I watched Westworld, I would know exactly what that meant. But something's going on in his head, and it's weird. And so the only thing I did there is I brought the pad sounds up, and then I adjusted the pitch on Basic. So that's what I did on Basic, and I also, as we get down to the Meyer Choir, which is something that I made and released last week, and I'm super proud of this one. This is something I made with my family months ago, and I think next week's video will be how I made these particular sounds. It was super easy, but I started off wanting to make a choir out of my own voice, and and I 6 or 7 pitches, and I thought, well, let's add my family. And I'm not gonna lie, when I got down to the little kids, there was a ton of editing to get enough of the sound. But the idea is that I even kind of scooped into the sound just to make it imperfect and really have some crazy weird artifacts in it. And I'm so thrilled with the way it turned out. And so I brought that in here, and I also have the pitch bend going on. So here's the Meyer Choir. So that was my way of making things a little trippy during that section. And then the choir comes in later on. I don't know how audible that is in the final mix. And then I tried something a little different for the end, another version of the Meyer Choir. And on this, all I did a lot, didn't I? I sped up the attack. And it was a way to get the attack on those notes to just add another layer in that last time through. And with the pull tech engaged, rolling off low frequencies, and then Echo Boy, of course. Space Echo setting. All right, now, there were 2 sounds that I have not released. One was an acoustic guitar playing. If you noticed that, then I don't have that sample. So, but the other one was this harmonic sound. And all this is a ukulele harmonic. My bad. So without the effects, and I pitched it up and down in different spots here. Pretty boring sound, right? But I wanted it to provide some impact. Lots of decapitator. 2 Echo Boys, guys. A second. And so in the mix, apologize, this is probably going to be too loud. We'll listen to it, a better mix here in a second. But I just really wanted it to punch through and have this moment of change from section to section. All right. Let's look at the last thing. Is my acoustic guitar. Plenty of compression with a fairly fast attack, moderate release. So what I'm doing there is I'm playing fifths on the second string, and the second and third string, the bottom two and whatever, the A and the D string, and just trying to accent and give some drive to that. All right. I think that covers every instrument that I use. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to mute these guys, and then I'm going to re-engage my plugins that were on my master bus, which in this case it's my music bus, which is then going to the master because I did not want to run all of the dialogue through that. And then I'm going to turn off the automation. And let's just check volume real quick. Hopefully that's not too loud. Now this should be closer to the final mix, unless I'm missing something. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let that play down, and you can watch this, and then I'm going to read any comments and I'll address those. But here is my track. All right, a couple things I know that I missed here. I did some of these reverse sounds with the bells. I'm not sure if that's the continuation of what I showed you earlier from the MIDI, or it was just, I just reversed it and tweaked. And then we have these hi-hats. At this point, I was just trying to really emphasize some of those turning points there. And I think that is all. I think that's all that's there. Oh, notice on the cymbals, what I typically do with my cymbals is I will print them. I mean, I use the sounds from my soft drums, but I just printed them down and then I move them around in audio, especially because some of them are a little off. And then I have some swells that, you know, you press the button and it swells and you don't know exactly how long the MIDI is. So it's easier just to, I just print them down and then move them around to the points that they make the most sense. So questions over here, MT Champion, you asked my thoughts on the scene. I don't have thoughts one way or the other on it. Westworld looks pretty interesting. I need to watch more of the show, but you know, it gave multiple moments that I thought allowed for creativity with the music. I second guessed myself on some of the decisions I made if I had a little more time or thought through it. But at the same time, I'm also trying to, as a production music composer, part of this was saying, you know, I have all the time in the world to make a production music track. I mean, I have deadlines, but if I don't meet them, it's not the end of the world. But I hear all these film composers talk about how everything is cutthroat, gotta get it done fast, gotta get it done fast. So part of this process was, although at the very beginning I stared at it for a long time and I tried a few things, I put it away until maybe Tuesday or Wednesday. And then this was one really long session, and then I came back the next day and did some tweaks. But I wanted to write it in such a way that, maybe, okay, I'm on a deadline here, I gotta get it done, and kind of treat it that way. So my second guessing has a lot to do with that, you know, but having too much time can be a curse most of the time when it comes to making music, I've found. I did put some key changes in here, which is something we don't do a lot in production music. And I listened to it and I'm thinking, oh, that was kind of weird, but I went with my gut on that. So hopefully you liked it. That is all I've got. Hopefully I didn't miss too many comments, but I really do appreciate you watching. I hope that you got something out of this. I may do live streams more in the future. Ask me questions and leave those in the comments below, and I'll do my best to answer. But I hope that you enjoyed this. And if you want to go watch it with the film, you can find it on my YouTube channel. And best of luck to any of you that entered. Maybe we'll be one of the 10,000 people that entered to actually win this thing. We'll see. All right. Until next time, take care. Oh, how do I end it? There we go. End stream. End.